Tonight, stopping the free fall as the U.S. gains more than 2 million jobs.
This is a great, great day in terms of equality.
The president takes a victory lap. This as protests across the country turn peaceful.
Amazing grace.
In the wake of a memorial service for George Floyd after his death under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. Plus,
lean into him.
Discovering the silver lining.
How do you redeem a crisis? You continue to be faithful in the midst of it.
In the midst of a deadly pandemic. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Happy Friday, everyone. Are we at the start of America's coronavirus recovery? Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, after months of bleak news on the economic front, tonight a stunning reversal in the latest jobs report. The nation added 2.5 million jobs in May. And to top that, the unemployment rate actually went down to 13.3%. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, this is probably the happiest we've seen President Trump in months.
Yeah, John, you're right. Today, you could instantly tell Trump is having a very great day, he put it. He took a bit of a victory lap around the Rose Garden, touting the new numbers. And then he broke down some of the details. In fact, here they are, the latest jobs numbers for May. The leisure and hospitality saw a 1.2 million job gain in May. Construction added 464,000. Retail at 368,000, and manufacturing at 250,000 new jobs. Now, Trump said, look, this is a very big deal and shows the economy is bouncing back sooner rather than later.
But this is outstanding what's happened today. Now, they thought the number would be a loss of 9 million jobs, and it was a gain of almost 3 million jobs. Nobody's ever seen anything. I think it was incredible in a couple of ways. Number one, the numbers are great, and this leads us on to a long period of growth. So we were able to close our country, save millions of lives, open, and now the trajectory is great.
President Trump called this one of the greatest comebacks in American history. He said we're going to have a good July and August and a spectacular September, October, and November. In fact, his chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, was also in the Rose Garden. He said, looking ahead towards next year, that things are looking pretty good. Take a listen.
This was a sharp, tough, heartbreaking pandemic contraction. It's not a typical economic contraction. It was like a bad hurricane or a bad snowstorm. There's a lot of heartache in that, and there's a lot of hardship in that, absolutely. But they're sharp and fast, and they recover fast.
And today, again, we saw a bit of that recovery. President Trump also signed a bill in the Rose Garden. It extends the deadlines for businesses that received emergency PPP loans. Now, this bill did get bipartisan support. And again, it will help businesses as they begin to reopen. And now we've seen a bit of a recovery in all 50 states, or a reopening, that is, in all 50 states. So businesses that did apply and receive those PPP loans, this will definitely help as they reopen their doors. John?
All right, White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, for more on the economy, we now turn to Mark Hamrick, senior economic analyst at Bankrate. Mark, thanks for being with us. We saw some extraordinary job numbers out today that no one was expecting. What accounts for the drop in unemployment? And is this a precursor to more good news as states continue to reopen?
I think it, as the Labor Department itself said, reflects the slow easing of the restrictions across the country that in the end were the cause of the downturn. And I think we have reason to believe that we've seen the worst, or perhaps the peak, of unemployment. Let's remember that this is all to blame ultimately on the virus. And the problem is we don't know how the virus is going to perform going forward either, meaning, we do worry about what might happen later this year. But for this day, after seemingly a series of just heartbreaking events in our country over the past days, weeks, and months, this is worth celebrating. We also need not to forget, though, that there are still 21 million unemployed within this report. That's the official number. We have 10.5 million others who are working part-time who would like full-time work. And we have 4.4 million who would like to work but are not looking, perhaps because they believe they'll be called back.
So to get you to comment on the expert part of the alphabet, does this point to signs of a so-called V-shape or W-shaped curve and a quicker economic comeback?
Well, it might be a member of the alphabet of another language. I think for the most part, we have thought that a V-shaped recovery is less likely, and that was affirmed by our most recently published this week Bankrate economic survey that projected the unemployment rate in May of next year would still be as high as 10%. But perhaps if we pull this recovery forward, perhaps we might actually have single-digit unemployment sooner rather than later. Still a lot of damage beneath the surface. And let's remember, consumers are going to be reticent. In some cases, they can't even engage in the activities they would have before if bars and restaurants are limited. We're not going to see the level of people, for example, visiting Walt Disney World the same as before. And it's going to be a slow recovery. But this is good news.
Real quickly here, we have about 15 seconds. What about the disparity in race in the job numbers?
Those are huge. The unemployment rate for blacks is close to 17%. For whites, it's 12.4%. Higher for women, nearly 14% versus 11.6% for men. So there's still a lot of hurt out there.
Still a lot of room for improvement indeed. Mark Hamrick with Bankrate, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, tonight, police in upstate New York are under investigation after officers forcibly knocked down a 75-year-old man to the ground. It happened during a rally protesting George Floyd's deadly arrest. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now. Eric, we're looking at now more than a week's worth of nationwide protests.
That's right, John. And demonstrations have been mainly very nonviolent in recent days. This is something that George Floyd's family has consistently called for, even during a memorial service yesterday. But then, hours later, another incident involving the police.
Under Floyd happens every day in this country, in education, in health services, and in every area of American life. It's time for us to stand up in George's name and say, get your knee off our necks.
An emotional memorial service in Minneapolis for George Floyd was followed by more demonstrations, most of them peaceful. But then this happened. 2 cops in Buffalo, New York, under investigation after this disturbing video showing them shove a 75-year-old protester to the ground. The officers kept walking as the man bled on the sidewalk.
It's just fundamentally offensive and frightening. It's just frightening. You say, like, who are we? How did we get to this place?
Friday, President Trump talked about police brutality from the Rose Garden.
Equal justice under the law must mean that every American receives equal treatment in every encounter with law enforcement, regardless of race, color, gender, or creed. They have to receive fair treatment from law enforcement. They have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen.
Meanwhile, we're learning more about the other 3 officers charged in Floyd's deadly arrest. 2 of them, J. Alexander King and Thomas Lane, were rookies. According to his lawyer, King was on his 3rd shift as a full-time officer, and during the infamous arrest, told the other officers, quote, "We shouldn't do this." Lane was on his 4th day on the job, and his attorney says he asked veteran officer Derek Chauvin twice to roll Floyd over and then performed CPR on Floyd once he was inside the ambulance. Cries for justice continue, and not just in the U.S. In Sweden.
You can compare to America here in this country or in Sweden, but at the end of the day, it's everywhere. Racism is everywhere.
In Germany. In Mexico. In Vienna.
Fight the police! Fight the police!
And there are indications that change is already starting to happen. For example, in Minneapolis, that city is set to ban chokeholds for the police department there and to also require officers to report and intervene in any instances of unauthorized force that they see. Also, Reverend Sharpton announcing a march on Washington coming up on August 28th. That will be the 57th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic March on Washington. John.
Well, here with us now is Dr. Alveda King, Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn for Priests for Life. Dr. King, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, John.
As the niece of civil rights legend Martin Luther King Jr., what do you think would be his reaction to the violence we saw earlier this week in some of the riots across the country? I know it's something that you've spoken out about.
My uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist preacher, often spoke of the ministry of Jesus Christ. He did his best to follow in those steps. Martin Luther King Jr. said that violence is immoral. He was a very nonviolent person. Actually, the media, for some reason, and some of the rioters and all of those types took his quotation and said that riots are the language of the unheard. Martin Luther King Jr. did say that, but in the rest of that sentence, they cut the sentence off. He began to talk about how violence was impractical and immoral. And I'll add that violence is disrespectful. It damages and it hurts. If you think about George Floyd's family, and I watched the memorial service yesterday, they were grieving his brother Terrence says, "We want justice, but we do not support destruction." So I believe that my uncle, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., would agree with Terrence and his family.
What did you think he meant by the phrase violence is the language of the unheard? Not the part where it's being taken out of context, but what did he specifically mean by that?
When people are violent and emotional, people don't think rationally. I have that same problem. When I get frustrated and angry, I begin to lose my focus and I cannot articulate to my audience solution. My uncle understood that, and that's why violence is so unproductive. What it will produce is rage and anger and breaking and destroying. And then once that's all done, somebody has to pick up the pieces.
Right.
If someone has been killed, you can't even pick those pieces up.
Well, fortunately, we've seen the protests now largely turn peaceful. Is now the time for repentance and prayer?
Absolutely. Repentance and prayer are in order. I have been praying with groups. I've been praying individually. As we do 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways and seek my face, then I'll hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their lands. That's God talking. And so I have been encouraging the peaceful protesters to not give up, to continue to pray. I remember my father, Reverend A.D. King, in 1963. We were in Birmingham, Alabama. Our home had been bombed. A.D. and Naomi King and the 5 children were inside. And I remember my daddy rushing out because the outside agitators were there. And they had the Molotov cocktails. That's when I first heard of that, the flammable substance in a rag stuck in a bottle, and you light it and you throw it.
Right.
And turning over police cars and bricks and rocks. And Daddy stood on a car and he says, wait a minute. If you have to hit somebody, hit me, but I'd rather you go home. Okay, go home and pray. The people began to calm down. That happened in Ohio just a few days ago. Brian Kemper, my colleague, we worked together at Priests for Life. And Brian was with a sea of young people, children, and they were being instigated and people were trying to agitate them. And he says, this is Alveda King, Martin Luther King's niece. Pray, Alveda. And I did. And, you know, they began to listen and cry because I talked to them about their purpose and their destiny and asking God to define that and bless it. So peacemakers, arise.
Peacemakers, Jesus said, they will be called the children of God. Where do we go from here as a nation?
We must continue to do what we're seeing. I believe today, as we speak, during this week, the employment things leveling off again. Unemployment is going back down. Employment is going up. People are rebuilding as things open. Back in 2000, When 9/11 happened, everybody said they would rebuild, but they really kind of forgot to ask God, we will rebuild, we will do this. You can't do this to America. This time, we're saying God will help us rebuild. We are one nation under God. In God, many of us still trust. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take faith. It's going to take hope. It's going to take love. And when we do this, we'll see that we'll make it through COVID-19, through the race wars of 2020. God is going to help us.
Powerful words to end on. Dr. Alveda King, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Coming up, pandemic politics. After over a week's worth of protests and violence, we discuss that and more when Faith Nation returns.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. Joining me now is our trusty Special Friday guest, Julianne Manchester, political reporter for The Hill. Julia, always great to see you. Democrats, they wanted to go big with another relief bill. Republicans had been saying all along, let's wait and see. With the unemployment picture starting to show signs of improvement, what does this mean for Congress in the stimulus fight?
Well, I think this is probably good news for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and those Republicans. You keep hearing them say that V-shaped recovery, that we are on the other side of that letter V now, and that we are starting to see the dividends of opening up since May. So I think that is definitely true. However, you're going to hear a lot of Democrats say, look, the world has drastically changed since mid-March and April when you saw all these shutdowns start to take place. A lot of businesses have closed. A lot of positions have permanently been done away with in corporations, and there are Americans still on unemployment, thousands of Americans still on unemployment that need help. So you're going to probably see a back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, and it's possible that there could be another relief bill, but it may be more scaled back with Republicans citing that improvement in the economy.
Julia, today his Democratic challenger Joe Biden criticized the president for taking a so-called victory lap as black unemployment rose. This also as President Trump continues to blast D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser for her handling of the protests. Today, she dedicated a street near the White House, named it Black Lives Matter Plaza. Both leaders sending pretty strong messages.
very strong messages indeed. And I think this shows really how much of an issue this issue of race and this conversation about race that we're having in this country right now is going to be in the 2020 election in November. I think you are going to see a lot of candidates, whether it's at the local and state level, all the way up to the presidential level, try to address this. And we know that Democrats have been reliably African Americans have been reliably Democratic in past elections. However, I think you are going to see the Democratic Party work together with that constituency more now with Black unemployment down, as well as President Trump's very controversial response to this ongoing police brutality in the country, as well as this ongoing conversation about race that we're having.
Well, Julia, we always appreciate your insights and wish you a happy Friday and a happy weekend. Thanks for being with us.
You as well.
When we come back, Christians are uncovering a silver lining in the middle of the pandemic, learning to listen how God shouts to us in our pain. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Christian leaders are searching for a silver lining to the cloud of the coronavirus. Some have joined forces virtually, trying to discern God's voice for these times, the role of Christians in protecting America's rights. Here's CBN's Paul Strand.
In this recent digital simulcast about finding good things during this painful pandemic, Focus on the Family's Jim Daly talked about C.S. Lewis's saying that God shouts to us in our pains.
And this pandemic has been a time of pain, and I hope we can hear God shouting in it.
Then he shared 6 things he believes God is shouting. 1, God is with us right now.
Lean into him. He'll never leave us nor forsake us.
2, this isn't the end of the world. There's a new day coming. 3, God makes all things new, can help us form new good habits.
My wife Jean and I have been spending more time in the morning reading the Word and praying together.
4, even if death overshadows us, heaven is real and awaits us.
Scripture says that our lives are but a vapor, but we can't lose sight of what's coming after this life.
5, it's important that we not forsake God in this hard time, blame him and turn our back on him. And 6, God loves us.
I'm convinced that God is speaking to the world in the middle of this pandemic. Now, I don't believe he caused it, but he's allowed it, and he's using it to accomplish his purposes. Are we paying attention? Are we listening?
The Benham brothers appeared with their usual cheeky humor.
I'm David. This is my little brother, Jason. He's been in my shadow for almost 45 years now.
But they spoke solemnly about people of faith standing up for rights that are sometimes threatened during this pandemic, like free speech, or the right to assemble. David himself was recently arrested for sidewalk counseling outside an abortion clinic.
First, it's our responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless. But now all of a sudden, our rights are being threatened. And I was like, I'm not going to budge. And they ended up arresting me. How do you redeem a crisis? You continue to be faithful in the midst of it. That's how you do it.
To pass it on.
Create an appetite in your kids for the things of the Lord. So when we were kids, we woke up every morning, we caught our dad and our mom, both of them, our dad and our mom, either reading their Bibles or praying in front of the couch.
And stand.
We're American citizens. We have rights, and those rights are not given by government. They're given by God.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, he's handing out advice and jokes for free. We introduce you to the man known as the dad of the internet.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment, grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Well, finally tonight, millions of people are getting fatherly advice from an unlikely source. They're tuning into a man on YouTube for important life lessons that their own fathers, for one reason or another, couldn't teach them. After forgiving his own dad for not being in his life, Rob Kenny started a YouTube channel for those without a helpful father figure called Dad, How Do I?
I'm going to drive my van around for a little while and see if it holds a charge, and if it doesn't, then probably my next video might be me changing my battery out for you. All right? Thank you. You got this, and I'm proud of you.
The instructional videos range from how to change a tire to how to shave, with messages of encouragement liberally laced in between. No matter the topic, Kenny never fails to thank his viewers for watching, and he also tells everyone tuning in that he's proud of them. And we here are also proud of Kenny for his work. Thanks for watching, Faith Nation. We hope you have a great night and a safe and great weekend.